Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jenna Blackard, and I am going to be your host at the Real Raw You Synergy podcast. And today's guest is Elizabeth Woods. I just want to remind you that this podcast is now on video on YouTube. You can follow us there. You can also follow us on iTunes, so you can find the audio in other places as well as the video if you like to follow that way. I also want to remind you that we've got a few very fun things and live calls coming up. So if you're interested in hanging with us live, go ahead and look for details in your email. Now, today I'm excited. We're talking with Elizabeth Woods, and we've had an interview a couple years before, and I tell you, it was a huge hit. And she is really in tune with what's going on in the world today, our evolution as a being, our evolution to getting past some of the crappy resistance and the icky layers from many, many eons ago. And today we're going to talk about what that evolution is, how you can be even more a part of it by accessing more of your universal senses. And we are going to talk a little bit about discernment. So let's go ahead and get started. Elizabeth, welcome. Welcome to the call.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here, Jenna. I always love talking to you. You're amazing.
Thank you. Well, let's talk. And you were saying in our pre-call that you spoke with lots and lots of people, and you work with them both privately and in groups, and you're hearing a lot of some of the same things that continue to come up in the world, and you're coming, I guess, to the awareness of, wow, this is the creation of our new earth. So let's start there. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really amazing because I get to tap into many thousands of people all over the world, and it's been very precious because I get to be able to zoom in and out. As a seer, I can zoom into personal situations and zoom out and see the bigger picture, and zoom out and even see the galactic picture, and see the patterns that link all of those together. And of course, when we look at a personal situation, there's always something linking that person to, say, the collective patterning going on the planet. So with that, when I'm looking at what's happening currently, there's been a lot of very slow, kind of low-level fear running underneath what people are experiencing because they're watching a lot of big, huge changes occurring in our systems. And these systems are ones that we're really, really used to. Everything from the internet to financial systems, governance, you name it. And all of that is really been deeply corrupted for an incredible amount of time, as we know. And it's got to go. And it's not the same kind of energy that I assumed many years ago that would happen. I imagined it all blowing up, simultaneously in a giant mess. And it's not really been like that, thankfully. Instead, what I'm seeing is this dismantling, kind of like a really slow hurricane, this dismantling. And there are people who are here to help rebuild. And all of these people are taking part in this. And they're doing it in a clever way. Really amazing souls who are recognizing that they don't want to demolish the entire house and then completely lose access to all of the different, say, materials that could be reused, because not all these systems are 100% bad. There's parts of it that we want to save. So if we were going to demolish a house, even completely redo the foundation, we would take it down from the roof down and, reuse all the boards and all the bits and pieces and nails and, doing the best you can to salvage what is good. Right. And so that's something that I'm noticing too. People are ready to salvage from their own personal lives, constantly assessing, what is it that I really want to keep? And we're being pushed to this because of the newer energies that are available. And these energies are available, thankfully, because the earth has made some choice points. She's really smart. She's a alive, intelligent being who's taken us on a really interesting journey of evolution. And she made a choice point and continues to make merciful choice points. Instead of like kicking us off the planet, for example, she's saying, well, I'm going to embody another level of formlessness. And that means that structures that are dense, structures that are full of ego or promote ego, they're not going to be welcome anymore. And we're watching the earth do the best she can to help us out with that. So what we're watching as this slow dismantling is happening is also the simultaneous rebuilding. And it is the new earth. The new earth is us grounding higher dimensions, grounding higher consciousness into the 3D. And I always like to point out to people that over this past several years, as everyone's talking about the fifth dimension, it's made it sound like we're leaving the 3D behind. And that's not the job. The job is to ground all this stuff in the 3D. That's what these bodies are for. And our bodies are our greatest tool to grounding higher consciousness and higher light into the material world. And so those that have understood that, they're not asking for any attention. They're just doing it slowly in their own lives and beginning to be called out to the front lines. I'm watching a lot of, old guard teachers actually retiring. And all these new folks, many of my clients saying, hey, I'm just being pulled out of nowhere. What is going on? I'm being pulled into something new and I don't know where I am. Like, I don't know where these marching orders are coming from. And then I say, it's okay. It's because all of us are on the front lines now. There's no old books for us to depend on anymore. We're the ones writing the new books.
I love that. Yeah. Don't you think that, there's so many people that are still stuck in their limitations, their conclusions, that it's all about them. It's all about their desires. It's all about, what they love and hate, and still this polarity. I see it especially among, the younger millennial crowd.
Yes.
Now some of them are evolving faster than ever before, but we grow up and we realize it's not about us. And there's so much more joy when we're the contribution, when we are the contribution, not just to others, but we're in the allowance of universe. Hey, take it away.
Exactly. And there's that surrender piece that people are learning, and surrendering to acts of service that are far beyond them. And for example, I'll use a great example. I have a lovely client who actually is a pastor at a church. And she said to me the other day, Elizabeth, this acreage has just fallen into my lap. And this, local parishioner is saying, hey, do with whatever, do whatever you want with this acreage. And she said, now I'm getting these visions out of nowhere. And she's never had visions before. And she says, I'm getting all these visions of creating a community garden and having a healing space. How do I get this started? I don't even know the first thing about this. But it's those kinds of things. And I said, first off, make sure you're in full surrender, that you're not resisting this, because it's going to open up to serve your community in a way that is absolutely needed right now. It's that localism aspect. What can we do to get people out of their homes and actually connecting in person in our local areas and being able to create places of stability emotionally, physically, in real time, beyond the internet? Because from there, that's where the new earth begins. It's in your personal life. It's with you, inviting your neighbors to communicate with you in an open way. It's with us starting little circles at our houses and, having potlucks once or twice a month just to check in with local people. Lots and lots of people all over the world doing this and being called out of nowhere to do it. And they're surrendering to it. It's always, there's a double sword, right? It's surrender and willingness.
Mm-hmm.
How willing are you? Checking in with yourself every day. How willing am I today to do this work?
Right.
And let's say you say, I'm not willing today. That's okay. That means you need a break.
Mm-hmm.
Like the other day, for example, I just had one of those days where I woke up and I was so overwhelmed. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this today. And, normally I'd go and I'd sit down and I'd write out my to-do list and I'd pick something on there to get done or whatever. And I was unhappy. And I said, nope, I'm no good. I'm no good today. Taking a break, took the day off, just put my cell phone away and ran out into the woods to recharge because that day I had no willingness. But we got to check in every day. How willing am I to do this? What is it going to take? And people get overwhelmed also because they're visualizing, they're leaking energy. They're visualizing lots and lots of worst case scenarios. And that's really important because people leak energy when they do that.
Yeah.
And one of my tricks is when I catch myself doing that, I'll say, all right, I got to come back to 0 point. I got to come back to the now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll say, all right, well, what can I do? What's one small thing at this moment that I can do to mitigate that circumstance that I'm imagining? And then I will actually feel like I have more power, because actually the power isn't in the future or the past, it's in the moment. Mm-hmm. So zooming into the moment and saying, all right, I got to yank in all my energy here. I'm thinking about the past or the future, and I'm worrying about it. I'm worrying about how to pay the bills. I'm worrying about my living situation. I'm worrying about food, basics, and then some. Then we rein it in and we say, what's one small thing I can do right now to help myself heal? Or what's one small thing I can do right now to set up the future that I really want? Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's that you're going to fill out an application online. Just something, one small thing in that moment to rein in all your energy.
Yeah.
I find that very valuable.
Well, again, I think making a choice is what's really in there. And instead of getting stuck in the, it sucks, I worry, I have all these conclusions about what might happen or could happen, we step back and we go, okay, this is what today might seem. And I think it's important that we put that it might seem to be, right? Because a lot of it is the illusions and what we project on it.
Yeah.
And then we can go forth and go, okay, and I think life happens in each moment. So it is about only that one thing.
Always.
Yeah.
It is. And this also kind of leads us to, well, what about the people around me? What about them? I don't have any control over their actions, their deeds, their words, all of this. And I want to point something out that I've learned lately, that I can see when it's happening. When there's some level of light, all information, all words, all thoughts, all of that's light. Mm-hmm. And it's some kind of light or quality of light. So if it's, say, for example, like a really mean thought, that's going to be a dense energy, or we might say dark energy, but it's really not dark, it's just dense, so that it doesn't allow very much light through. And so I like to speak in terms of formlessness and density at this point, instead of light and dark, even, if possible.
Right.
Because that's actually more true. Uh-huh. And so if we have certain kinds of negative judgments on people around us, for example, that can be a lot of density that's built up. And then we're running all that info, that light that comes straight from source through those frameworks of density, and what comes out of it, what shines through from that level of density. If it's a lot of judgment and resistance in our own self, there's not going to be a lot of light that can get through that density. If we're shifting out our judgments and our resistance, our expectations, our attachments, all that's egoic structure. If we're moving that density out of the way, more pure light can move through. And then it's got another job. That light has to then get through the other person's density too. And this is where we have to trusting that the right amount of light, the right kind of light, the right information is going to get through to that person, whether or not they've cognitively grasped it. Sometimes you've planted seeds that will flourish later. And so for those of us who are surrounded in folks who think that the whole universe revolves around them, this sort of narcissistic culture that has been promoted, from the ground up, from kindergarten onwards. What do we do about that? Well, the best way for you to make sure that better quality light is getting to the people around you is for you to work on your own structure. And I like to kind of consider it like a window through your own being, then as pure as you can get it, as nice and clean and pure as possible, so that pure light can get to people more fully. And then from there, that's all the job you've got, because you can't force someone to shift density and receive more light. They won't be able to handle it. So we've got to trust and surrender our own light and our own wisdom around us and stand in that state of non-attached, unconditional love. And it's key because it's not going to create a situation where every single person's going to then receive more necessarily, but unconditional love does some amazing things to people. It's bright light. And when you shine bright light on stuff, you see more. So my new adage, my new thing, I like to say, new light, new sight. So when we're coming into new consciousness, it's like coming into a place of new light. So you know what it's like to walk into a black light room, and then suddenly you see all the little cat hairs. Yeah, and you see all the little sunspots. New light, new sight. Every time you're in a new level of light, you get to see some new flaws every time. And that's what we want. And so we want to value that. New, fresh energies or light in our own lives. What light can we continue to allow through us? And it's going to show people around you what they need to look at, whether or not they go into it, surrender into it, and start working on it and getting to work on that shadow part or those pieces and density. It's up to them. We can empower people and be their cheerleaders, but have that stance. All right, I'm going to work on my window so that it can be as pure as possible, and I'm going to blow my field up to be as big and full of all that light as possible, and I'm going to trust that people are going to get what they need from that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I know one of the things you talk about in the program that we're going to offer people, and I don't want to give it all away, but I think it's important to touch on here, is what you call full body discernment. And and playing it with it from kind of an advanced multidimensional space. Because I think there's people play around all day long with, am I judging this? Am I judging that? And discernment's kind of like still judgment, but it's kind of like that level down. And there's a little more sensitivity to it. So, can we, I think that'll help people really get kind of the depth of the shift that's possible here.
Yes. I actually like to imagine that judgment and discernment are exact opposites.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
Absolutely.
why don't you tell me why you
Sure,
should?
sure. When I energetically feel into the difference between judgment and discernment, judgment gets run through all the different programs that we've learned from our cultures and our families. And so then that judgment then often will say, well, that's either right or wrong. Judgment will stick stuff into polarities or stick stuff into boxes that aren't necessarily 100% true. And discernment runs more on a spectrum. So with discernment, you're not running it through your culture stuff, your programming. You're running it through from the soul's witness and then the body, and then that's it. So when we want to work on any programs that might be in the body, in that case, and you'll know it because you'll feel that choice point come through in a very physical way. And then the technique I teach is to check in with your three minds, your brain, your heart, and your gut.
Yeah.
Because they're all very deeply intelligent. They have a lot to say. And they have very different points of view and jobs. But we want all three of them to help us make a full body decision. And the body is amazing because the body itself doesn't have ego. The body itself doesn't have ego. The body itself learns from our choices. And a lot of times people will forget. I mean, this huge remembrance point of, well, am I this body? Am I really Elizabeth? No, definitely not. I live in a body named Elizabeth. But I'm a soul and I'm the commander of this body. This is my 3D spaceship. And I get to run it through, but it's our greatest tool. The body's amazing. It's so pure. And we really don't give it that much credit for it being so clever. And so my technique is full body discernment. We're not going to run our choices through layers of structure or programs anymore. So that means that if it's something simple, like, here's a good example. A lot of people say, well, Elizabeth, I'm thinking about moving. How do I know which house to move to? And then they want to pay me to be a psychic, right? And say that house, and then make it so easy for them, right? But that would be creating dependence. And that is not of the new earth.
Yes, I'm just going to stop you there for just a second because I think that this is really important. So on a couple calls back, I did a call and she's like, go into your body and go, yes, 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 and go, this is my yes, and notice the sensations and what's going on. Then she did it with the no. And it was so simple. I had never had anybody, like, I know the difference between what's light and what's heavy. Although if I don't actually tune into my body in that moment, I can just conclude, I want to do it, it's light.
Yeah.
Right? And so I really loved that practice of like, okay, let's see, light, okay. So really that's how you're using the word full body discernment. Because when I think of discernment, I still think of it kind of going, I prefer.
Sure.
This is my preference. And I know that this is my preference. And that could be based on conclusion. So I'm going to erase everything that I know about how I was using the word discernment. And I'm going to go. I like the way you're using it a lot better.
Yeah, I like it too. I've been playing with this because I think as a psychic, my job is to be a mirror. I'm an oracle. I'm not a normal psychic. So I'm a mirror. And when someone comes up to the mirror and they want to see the truth, that's really an important place for someone to then be responsible for the information that they're receiving. And so for me, to make sure that that's happening, to keep them in their power, I keep, anything I show someone in that mirror, I ask them, does that feel right? Does that feel right? Is that right or not? Because it's not up to me to decide if it's right. It's up to you. And that's really key, because then I want to make sure that we're not creating dependence. I don't want necessarily people to feel like they have to reach outside themselves for the right answer. Now, they can reach outside themselves for more info. Everybody should. I do. We all need help with lots of things. I need help with healing. I need help with, business. I have lots of things I need help with. That's not what I mean. It doesn't mean that we're shutting down asking for help. It means that we know we can run every decision through that brain, heart, and gut and get a clear answer. And so here's where my full body discernment gets more detailed.
Okay.
I see the brain mind. I see the brain mind as having a specific function, and it's not memory. People think the brain mind's there to have memory, and it's not. The brain mind's a very poor place for memory. It's got a lot of other stuff going on. But as many of us know, you don't remember what happened exactly last Thursday around breakfast time. You just can't. Your brain can't hold all that memory, but there is a part of your body that does, and that's your heart. So the brain mind's function is to be very logical and to come up with pros and cons. And that's really its main key function. Constant logic and pros and cons. It's what in anthropology we call transactionalism. The brain's always considering lots of transactions and lots of pros and cons all the time. So you can totally depend on the brain for that. But then when we drop into the heart and we use her as a brain or him as a brain, that heart has full body memory, and it's got it since you were in the womb, because that heart really doesn't regenerate very much. So when we finally leave these bodies, the heart actually maintains perfect body memory from the moment you were in the womb. And that heart is telling your whole body all the time about that memory that it retains. Which is partially why we'll still have scars on our body many, many years after we have brand new cells all over the body.
Right.
And it's because that field, the heart field's constantly telling all the 100 million new cells about who you are every day and all the things that have ever happened, including last Thursday at breakfast.
Well, in Access, we call that we recall. And there are often times like you can't remember something right away, but if you ask to your body and your everything that you are to recall it, then you know. And because you might, I don't know if you guys, any of you guys were watching me when you asked me that, I was like kind of going, and in NLP, I think in NLP work, you actually look up, right? I don't know if I was or not, but I was trying to recall. So I think I probably had eggs, I'm like, maybe that was Friday, but it's interesting because did I know it right away? But no, I might have been able to jog things to recall it.
Yes, exactly.
And yes, I think that you're very right on. That's all through your energy, your body, and everything.
I've had clients with like serious memory issues, brain memory issues, and then I'll train them to start using their heart's memory instead. And it's made a huge difference. So absolutely. And honestly, to make it simple, we literally talk to that part of our body. So I'll say, dear heart, help me remember this. Or I'll do heart commands. Dear heart, please shift out this density out of my body and field now. And then I'll take a nice big deep breath to let that vagus nerve know that's okay. If we're making a change, right? If we're moving density out, then we also want to replace it too. Most people don't clear properly using the heart space. They'll clear it, but then they don't replace it. And I always point out, in physics, you don't want to leave a vacuum because you don't know what's going to come take its place. You want to be in charge of that. So I'll say, dear heart, please fill my whole body and field with whatever quality of light I'm bringing in. Joy right now, or focus. That's a good quality of light. Happiness, unconditional love. And then I'll say now, and then take a big deep breath And working with the heart in this way, anything goes. Pain, discomfort, anxiety, judgment, expectations, anything. Anything goes. Trauma. And that way we don't have to relive stuff anymore. We can be shifting out and replacing and finding that the human body is kind of like an archaeological site. It's got all these layers of density that you've inherited from your ancestry written in your DNA. And many people don't realize this, but one strand of our DNA has enough memory, has more memory actually, than all the computers on the planet combined. One strand of DNA has that much memory. Imagine how many generations and hundreds of thousands of people's experiences are written on our DNA. And I see that as density, All right, it's time to bring in some grace. We're going to clean up layer after layer after layer. If you're consistent about and serious about a spiritual practice, tackling your DNA's memory, tackling your own density will be key, because that's how you come up with a nice, clean, clear window. So then there's the gut mind. And the gut mind can be really interesting, because the gut mind also has neurons. So does the heart, just like the brain does. So they are real brains. But people are like, well, what am I talking to when I talk to my gut mind? And I say, well, you're not talking to your intestines, you're talking to the bacteria in your intestines. And if you're sick and you have a low immune system and a bunch of, say, candida, your gut mind's going to be pretty numb. And you're not going to get a very good response from it. But if you're doing well,
it's so funny when people bring in actual, here's some of the reasons why we eat clean, right? Because, I have come from a school where they're pretty much like, no, everything, if it exists on this planet, your body can turn it into light energy. And it's like, except my body might not really know how. So,
that's true too.
Well, we're on the same page.
Yeah, exactly.
All I'm saying is
this is why.
And ask your body so that you don't create an overgrowth like candida.
Yes. Because it has a direct,
and then try to work it another way, right?
Right.
Clear it another way energetically, if you have to. And I don't think there should be a lot of rules or laws around food, but I do think that, the body should have a say.
It should.
Yeah.
And with that mindset, Jeneth, I'd like to point out that my approach to diet is very different than any teachers, because I have a medical anthropology background.
Nice.
And one of the things that I point out is that these human bodies haven't really evolved that much. And our bodies really actually want to eat really ancient diets. So I like to have people say, first off, think about where your ancient ancestors come from and eat what they were eating, which is a little bit of a challenge, because most of them, for example, weren't eating wheat, nothing like the wheat we have now. If they were eating anything, usually, especially anybody who's pale like me, they were eating oats. They weren't eating any wheat at all. They were eating loads of seafood and oats, and so people will say, oh, I'm Irish, so that means I can eat potatoes. And I'm like, nope. Because the ancient Irish didn't have potatoes. Potatoes came from America. And so I say, go into your ancient ancestry, look at what they were eating and kind of move that direction. And you will often find that your body will celebrate that and give you a lot of robust health. There is some also lineage clearing can really help with your healing of your body, because a lot of times us, especially those of us with pale skin who came from areas like Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, the Viking areas, they were all watching a lot of and were part of siege warfare. So we have a lot of density in our DNA around slow starvation, especially from those areas. So siege warfare happened for a couple of thousand years, and that often is the reason why people start gaining weight after their 20s, suddenly out of nowhere. Like, I hit 30 and it was like a whole nother planet. Like, what happened? And it's because my body actually believes at that level, at the DNA level, that I might starve to death. And if you made it to the age of 30, which was rare back then, then your body's actually got a metabolic trigger that actually was put in place during those couple thousand years of siege warfare. This is why lineage clearing can help you so much with your health too, because you're going to be actually shifting out some of those old metabolic programs that were based in ancient trauma from our ancestors. And the gut can benefit from that highly.
Yeah.
And these three brains are intimately connected. So when there's a candida overgrowth from wheat that we shouldn't be eating, or glyphosate sprayed foods that are killing the good bacteria in our guts, that's a huge problem. And I'm watching also many people are not making digestive enzymes. They can't even digest their food. They're not absorbing their food.
Yeah.
And that lack of digestive enzymes is a sign that the liver is overloaded from those pesticides. And that's across the globe.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, I don't want to go too much into to that. So how do you in your work do a lineage clearing?
Yeah, so I like to use that heart clearing technique. It's what I call heart commands. And so I'll do a basic one for you.
Okay, cool.
So to get ready for it, and it only takes like 5 minutes to do it, but to get ready for it, you're going to want to come up with a list of things you want to clear. So some of it doesn't all have to be your stuff. So like if you know that great grandpa was an alcoholic, and you're not, that's okay. That's still written in your DNA. So you're going to want to say, all right, well, I'm going to tackle alcoholism. I'm going to tackle anger issues, or, get specific. If you know what kinds of traumas happen to any of your family members, include them.
Yeah.
And then
people who lived in the Depression and that lineage keeps going down, that's a biggie too.
Yeah, scarcity, fear of starvation, fear of death.
Right.
Yeah, big ones.
Yeah.
So I always say, come up with your list. Let's say you have 10 things.
Okay.
And then your next list is going to be 10 things that you're going to replace that with. Now, you don't have to make it complicated. Like, it doesn't have to be an exact opposite thing. If you want to find 10 different ways to say happiness, then pull out your thesaurus and do it. Just 10 qualities of light that you want to help bring in for yourself and your lineage. And so then you have your what am I shifting and what am I replacing it with lists. And so then you'll say, we'll drop into the heart and we'll do the command. And that sounds like, dear heart, please shift, and then list your 10 things. And then I'll say up, down, or out of my whole body and field now. And then we take a big deep breath to let the body know that's okay. Oh, my apologies. I forgot of an important step.
Wow. Well, no, that's it seemed to work. I've got another question after that, but
okay,
that's good. Yeah. What did you?
We want to include our lineage. So before you do a command, you'll invite any of your lineage that would like healing into your field.
Okay.
So you might visualize your heart field getting real big, and I'll actually ask the lineages, stand behind me in spirals, because spirals fit more people in quantumly into a smaller space. So I say, stand behind me in spirals, and blam, you'll feel all these different souls behind you. It's pretty cool. And then you do a heart clearing, and you'll say, up, down, or out of my whole body and field, and the bodies and fields of my lineage now. And then we take a big deep breath, and then we'll replace it, and we'll say, dear heart, please fill my body and field and the bodies and fields of my lineage with your 10 new things now. And then taking another deep breath again. and watch it fill in and feel the relief of your lineage as they say, thank you for that healing. It's very profound, and I'm watching a lot of people doing this particular technique, and all these different amazing problems in their body are going away. It's very precious.
Yeah. There's a great ease with that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wrote down was what I notice if I just get a little bit hungry, I will actually hear the words in my head, which I'm guessing is like an entity, but it'll be like, eat hungry now. And I'm like, and I've been really focused on trying to clear it. I'm like, no, you're not that hungry. Would you please go away and can we fulfill with something else?
Yes.
So one of the things I wrote down was I want to clear that little voice inside my head that's like, eat hungry now. I mean, it's like, it's literally like a little child.
That's funny.
It's like maybe one day when I was like 6, I got too hungry and I started this thing. I'm not sure, but sure. I'm like, and now I'm just guessing that it's a pattern, an entity.
It sounds like two things. It sounds like a program.
Yeah.
Because programs will run and you're like, what was that?
Yeah.
And that sounds like a program. And you're right. You probably learned it a long time ago or something. And now it's kind of taken on its own personality.
I know.
It's
just a heck annoying. I've tried to play with it. Yeah. It still seems to remain there. Maybe not every single time, but it's there a lot. It's there enough that I notice, right?
Yeah. I have a couple of tricks for you.
Okay, cool.
So if you want it to go away as a vocal message, every time you hear it, and this sounds like it would be the opposite of what we want to do, but it works really well because it's not expecting you to do this. Every time you hear it, bow to it and say, thank you. Thank you so much for trying to help me, but I require you to shut down now. I'm the soul in charge and I've got a different plan. And my plan is that I'm going to satisfy myself with something else and then take a big deep breath. And if you keep tackling it, it'll take a little while because the biology of the brain works slower than, say, a computer to erase stuff like this.
Right.
But with that gratitude, you're pressing a pause button. And the brain's like, whoa, she's not reacting like she normally does.
Right.
Because, as amazing as our brain is, it can't tell the difference between a negative or positive reaction. It actually thinks of everything in binary, reaction or no reaction.
Well, right. So, because I have been reacting to it, I've been like,
yeah, exactly. And so the brain's like, oh, she's reacting. It worked. It worked. It must be helping. Right. And so when we're grateful, that's a neutral. That's a 0 button. That's a pause.
Right.
It'll stop it right in its tracks, and you'll actually start to feel the brain trying to rewrite it. And then the next thing is use your heart to talk to your body. And so if you're craving something or, that weird hunger program comes up or you're having addiction issues, the same would apply. So I like to say, dear heart, please lift this craving or lift this desire that I'm having right now for whatever out of my body and field now, and then take that big deep breath. And then I'll say, dear heart, please fill my body and field with satisfying and nourishing light now, because that's a quality of light too. And we'd rather be nourished with light in that case. And that's us reconnecting to the source field that's got all the nourishment we could ever want, all the energy we could ever want. A lot of times addiction is due to people not having enough connection to that field. So then we command that out, we replace it with nourishing and satisfying light now, and then take a breath again. And then I'll go drink water, because what you've done is you've just nourished your body with high vibe light, and that's dehydrating.
Right?
And that once that drink of water happens, usually the craving will go quite quickly.
It's funny because I don't really crave things.
Mm-hmm.
I used to. I know what it is like, but
Yes.
I don't crave things. I have, of course, food preferences, but I usually also know what I wish, to bring in,
Yes.
really by asking my body. It sometimes just wants beet juice or something like
Yeah.
crazy like that.
Yes. Something
Uh,
silly,
but
full
I
of
can see
nourishment.
how it works on all levels. But I do think it makes me eat more than is required.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's saying, well, I just want more energy. I want more light.
Or it wants something.
Yeah, or
I
something,
started,
something.
yeah, I started to ask the question, what do I hunger for?
Yeah,
And it helps minimally. So we'll keep playing with it. I mean, yay, it's there, and maybe it can help other people too. So, uh,
absolutely.
yeah. All right. So let's talk about. I made you put together an advanced multidimensional program for my
Happy
people.
to.
Excites me.
Happy to.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. I know that this work in full body discernment is just a very small piece of the entire program. Let's talk about the program.
Yes, absolutely. First, I did include one of my classes that I called the Playground of Time, and it really should be called the Playground of Timelessness, because I take people out of time actually in that, and it is an advanced look at time.
Love
Um,
that.
and in my style, I have this. I'm a bridge between science and spiritual thinking. And in that style, then I address the issues around time, the questions around time that most people have commonly, and from a scientific viewpoint with a spiritual descriptive.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into, well, how can we start to work with time in a more advanced way? And then how can we use that advanced thinking around time to jump into even higher states of consciousness where timelessness and formlessness really are what we're working with. And that's the truth we're trying to get to. So in that class, we walk through that very systematically and then out of time altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that I think is a very advanced class because anyone who's doing any type of work in the world could use this for conscious advancement. And it will end a lot of that worrying in the programs around the past, any stuff we've got going on with trying to rein in our power. And I think that's a very advanced direction for people to go. And I take that seriously.
Yeah.
And then there is that full body discernment workshop, I believe, that I included. Jenna, forgive me, I don't have the list of things in the program in front of me.
Well, I can bring it up real quick.
Okay.
Because, yeah, let's go through it all because it's absolutely awesome. When I saw it, I was like, ooh, this is juicy.
It is juicy. I like it. I pulled all the best stuff together.
I'm in the wrong email.
That's okay.
One of the things while I'm shifting emails here, if I can do two things at once, I've I've practiced a long time. One of the things about time, access consciousness, which is my main
Yes.
work of art that I've been playing with, really says, no, there is no truth about time. And I'm like, well, there's a little truth because on Earth, I do meet people at certain times and spaces and days. So,
right. We have schedules and a clock and a calendar and right.
But here's the thing that I got from it, which was super cool when I went through and practiced and played with time around their work, was screw like 90-day goals. Like, I think it's cool to play with an energetic feeling vision. And I do this thing called the 90-day note. And I think that it's fun to do it from a very feeling and energetic standpoint, playing with the universe. But there is some real cool value in just kind of saying, I kind of want this kind of like 90 days, but
Mhm.
let's just like slice it into 1 or 2 week intervals.
Yeah.
And let's just see what we can get done right now. And we'll just play with it in the moment or in the week, right?
Yeah.
And what I found is it made things so much faster for me. Like I literally got my head around no time, speed of space work.
Yeah.
So I am super excited about that. And I obviously cannot do 2 things at once. Because I like using my hands, I'm not even like putting it in the
It's a very clever way to use time.
Yeah. Right.
And to think of time as a gift, a linear time is a gift. The fact that we get to experience what is basically a state of no time,
Right.
As a linear state, it gives us free will.
Right.
It gives us opportunities to grow.
Yeah.
And
okay, guys.
we beat up on linear time so bad, don't we? We beat up on the ego. We beat up on linear time. And I don't think it's fair to either of those things.
Yeah. All right, you guys, you can see this at realrawu.com/Elizabeth, realrawu.com/Elizabeth. The special offer, and I'll let you jump in when you want.
Sure.
It's the Advanced Practitioners Package. 1 class, 2 hours long, with advanced multidimensionality, instant access to the playground of time, which we've been talking about, understanding time and timelessness, formlessness, and using it for higher consciousness. Gosh, that also reminds me of a clearing that I did about being out of control, out of definition, out of form, structure, significance.
Yeah.
I bet it includes all that. And then you get 3 advanced workshops, 3 hours, instant access to the full body discernment, which we talked about a little bit earlier,
Yes.
using the full body to make decisions with complete confidence.
Much needed.
Yeah. You also get fields of limitation and limitlessness, recognizing the embodied programs of limitation. That sounds juicy.
Let's talk about that one.
Okay.
That one is...
Well, let's finish the package.
Yeah, let's finish the package, sure.
And then there's also 2 other cool things. One is quantum healing and remote viewing for practitioners wanting to advance to the next level of healing. And also there's an ebook included in all this. And she has lowered the price point to this just for you guys to $97. So I think that you are going to really fall in love. All this is written up at the site at realrawu.com/Elizabeth. If you're listening on our page at Real Raw You, you can find the link at the bottom of the page. It's a big yellow button. And also, if you're listening on iTunes, you just go to realrawu.com and you can hunt it down. Everything is pretty clear on the site. Woo.
Awesome. Yeah, that's my favorite classes I've ever taught. All of them.
Gosh, these are juicy ones. I think it was worth having the little conversation to
get
the advanced. A little more advanced. Let's bring in some other work. Let's talk about fields of limitation.
Yes, absolutely. So this one is probably one of my golden moments, because at one point in time I was recognizing that there were some very specific programs that made people function in this matrixy reality. It's like the matrix itself acting like a structure and a system at the same time, and then we're all the little slaves that live in this and function in it. And I was noticing the difference between people who had stepped out of that and working in and living in the new earth, and then them suffering because there were these very clear fields that kept pulling them back into functioning in that slave mentality. And so I identified them. They're the 5 fields of limitation. And from a global anthropological perspective, we examine these particular programs. And I'll describe one for as an example. The field of false value, that human beings have been programmed to believe that they need to value everything according to some standard of money. And this is super old program, super old. And this goes back before they had coins. I mean, human beings used to use even shells as money and other things as
Right.
quote unquote money, right? And so this field of false value keeps people in a constant state of fear and scarcity. And that is the mindset of a good slave. And what's the opposite of it? Well, there's 5 fields of limitlessness. There's 5 fields of limitlessness that tie us back to the universe and its laws. So what would the opposite of that field be? It's the field of limitlessness around infinite value. The fact that everything around us, your time, your body, you have infinite value. There is no amount of money that can value that. Does that mean we give up money as a tool? No, but we relegate it to its position right next to a hammer. And then we get back our power. And there's a big difference walking around valuing that, that apple, valuing that person, valuing your own house or your car in an infinite way first. Changing the foundation of your thinking is incredibly powerful. The reason why I included this in this practitioner's package is because to be able to name these 5 fields so broadly is really helpful to all who are practicing, because they can then identify immediately, oh, you're coming to me with these issues around scarcity and self-value and worthlessness. That's going to, that's clearly a function of this deep programming beyond that person. It has to do with their ancestors and human history.
Yeah.
And then they can show that person, what if you were to start thinking in this way, and we deprogram you so that you can step into a field of limitlessness. It's life-changing. And it brings in a whole lot more light to people. And then they start to ask themselves profound new questions about the truth of their reality. And it really does cause a huge jump in consciousness. And here's the cool part about practitioners is if you're sharing this, then you're mastering it, because sharing it and teaching it helps you to embody it. And that's why I wanted to include it, so that practitioners themselves can use that as a jumping point, as any of that work is really, a jumping point into something bigger, fresher, and something that they can use for their clients.
Right.
That's key to me. I think that's very, very valuable info.
Whew. Yeah, no, and I mean, this is life-changing work that you do. I mean, it's so freaking life-changing.
It's deep. It's fun though. It's so much fun.
I know.
So much more that's fun because infinite.
I mean, that is the whole. We started this conversation with that, right? I mean, that is okay. You know what? This is our path, and because we're doing our path, there's so much joy in this path.
Yes, absolutely. And that quantum healing and remote viewing is also one of my very favorite topics. Because a lot of people, Jenna, they don't realize that being psychic is a human attribute. That being able to perceive energy outside the self is something that we're naturally capable of doing, all of us. And so I get to teach people easy ways to start to build their muscle of the third eye. And we want to treat the third eye like a muscle.
Yeah.
And then from there, you even get to go into realms of healing that stop limiting you by being able to do work on people who are across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
It opens up the practitioner's field to a global level. And that's really key to me, because I'm seeing all these practitioners worried that they're just going to be the same old, that they're just going to come out there and try to step up, and that there's going to be better healers around. And I keep pointing out, we desperately need every single one of those healers to be active and to start trusting themselves, because every healer comes with a completely unique facet of light, unique in all the world. And there are certain people in this world who desperately need you, that specific facet. Not me, but you.
Right. Well, that is the gift we are.
Yes.
I mean,
It is.
I know that people are like, I'm not a gift, and they'll play their pathetic,
That
noise.
worthlessness, yeah.
Yeah.
Just hate.
And I think it's, that's one of the first steps of transformation for most of us is, you know what, I'm owning my magic. I'm owning that I have this creative capacity beyond what I ever thought was possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to be able to be on the phone with somebody who's 5,000 miles away, and for you to be helping to bring in that healing through you to them remotely, and to be on the phone with them as they're experiencing that, is mind-blowing. And now I've done it so often that I don't have any doubts anymore.
Right?
And I also have the quantum physics background.
Uh-huh.
So we talk about that in that class. It's very advanced. So be prepared for some quantum physics talk, because that's the whole basis of that class, that workshop.
Uh-huh.
And then there's that ebook. It's Healing the Three Minds, the Brain, the Heart, and the Gut. It's 50 pages, and it's a lot of the same techniques I've been talking about today. And there's more in there. But the key is, I wrote that book to help heal myself from PTSD. I had developed my own techniques because I had been to 14 different therapists, and no one could help me. I had such extreme PTSD that the doctors were very worried about me physically because of it. And I, getting tossed out of clinics over and over again. I'm sorry, you're just too bad off. We can't help you.
Wow.
And I said, nope, I'm either going to die or I'm going to heal myself. And so I said, you know what, Elizabeth, you're smart enough. You can figure out a way. This body is a machine. This is a tool. You can figure out a way. And so I did. And I developed techniques to heal the brain, the heart, and the gut. And in that book, it's all of those techniques laid out in simple form, short book. And I want to give everyone who buys this package permission to use those techniques in your healing. Please.
Yeah.
Please. I was teaching in London, and I had all these different psychologists come to my workshop. And they were saying, we need you because you bridge classic stuff with modern spiritual thinking, and you don't miss anything. You cover the physical, emotional, mental, and the spiritual. And I said, well, I want you to take these techniques and please use them in your clinics. Right. And they were like, really? Are you sure? And I said, yes, please, please. This isn't for me. It's for everyone. And I really want people to feel like they can just add this to their toolbox. Add it to your toolbox and play with it. Play with it with yourself. Play with it with your clients. I get feedback every once in a while, Jeneth, from some teacher who's got this big crowd that they've been working with. And they'll teach them, for example, the heart commands. And I'll get feedback. Elizabeth, this is working for everyone. This is working, and they just want me to know that it's working. Right? And I love reports like that, because that's like, yes, okay, great, because I'm all about measurable results. If I'm going to do this scientifically impeccably, it's got to have results.
Right.
But that's why I love that book, because it's small, simple, straightforward, useful, and absolutely a great thing to add into the toolbox.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for that. What a fun interview. Thank you. I'm
Oh, thanks, Janet.
so grateful to reconnect and
You too. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. I think of you a lot, and I'm
Aw,
always holding you and your beautiful listeners, thinking of you always, really.
thank you. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I really adored our earlier conversation that we had a
mhm,
few years ago,
yeah.
and I have to say this is, 'cause, the uh, I just I love where you're going with your work.
Thank you.
It really is has a different edge than what so many other people do, and a depth to it. A depth that so many people aren't at least demonstrating on our calls here. So you know, I just
Thank
kind
you. I
of want
try to keep it deep and funny and relatable and human.
the stories are really relatable so that we really get it, instead of it just being like, yeah, it's this, and then we start spacing out and walk away and we don't even understand what you talked about.
Exactly.
I don't know about you, but I'm ready for real transformation on my calls.
Yeah.
And um, I think you're definitely one of the leaders to help us.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
You're so
I get
welcome.
I do lots of sessions here in my little office, and I get very little feedback really. But
Right?
that's the nature of
Because
the
they're
work,
just like,
right?
thanks for the help.
Well, yeah, and then I walk away every day hoping that
Aw.
the work is deep enough, that it's got the measurable transformation we want. And this feedback really helps me. It gives me a little extra push to keep going on days when I'm like, nope.
It's funny. Yeah, I actually have started to really ask my clients to respond back either
Oh,
way.
good. Yeah.
Like every session, their homework is to, you know, just tell me, what they got out of the call, what actions they may take, if any, and to really, let, like, that is their homework assignment. They have to let me know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I guess we could
and
say
it's
that for our package people too. If you find this useful, give
yeah,
us feedback. We want to hear.
yeah. Well, this wasn't even asking for feedback for me. I was asking for feedback for them.
Oh, I see. Yes, of
Okay,
course.
like I'm like, will you acknowledge this
Mm.
for you? And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, I see what they're getting out of it too, which is also very cool.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. I think
Right?
that's a really sweet homework to
Yeah.
acknowledge wow, to be able to say to someone, look how amazing you are. Look at the fact that, by golly, you're still alive after all you've been through. Look how far you've come. And to try to let people see from our point of view, from my point of view and yours, Janet, about what amazing people each individual are and what they've been through, and to acknowledge that, to be validated by someone's one thing, but to be encouraged to acknowledge it for yourself.
Well,
It's a
right.
special gift.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that you also learn in Access, gosh, I brought that up a lot on this call, which is
That's
really
okay.
weird because I don't much, but is when you don't acknowledge something about you, sometimes you will create the reverse, the exact
Yeah.
opposite. So if you don't see
Yeah.
your magic, then you will try to use your magic against you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes people fear that they're going to end up in arrogance.
I agreed. If they
Yeah.
acknowledge, but yeah,
Yeah. And
but
I have a trick for that. I have a little trick. My
okay.
trick is that, because worthlessness and arrogance is a tricky polarity. All of us have dealt with it, always, and
Low
I'm the
ego.
worst. I'm so afraid of arrogance that I run right into worthlessness and back and forth.
I have too.
It's a miserable hamster wheel is what it is.
Right.
You're spinning one way and spinning the other.
Uh-huh.
So I always say, find the middle ground. And everybody might be a little different. So for me, I found that my middle ground, the way I step out of the hamster wheel, is I consider that acknowledgement of what has happened or my own magic is actually compassion. And so for me, compassion feels really good. It's not arrogant and it's not worthless. It's exactly what I need to step out of that polarity. So for someone, they might need to ask, what is the middle ground that makes me feel really comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can say, well, actually, my acknowledging that this is working is self-compassion. And that leads me then to a deeper sense of unconditional love for myself and the validating of myself and what I've been able to accomplish. So that's my trick. It's always just finding the middle ground, finding that still point that keeps the wheel from spinning, and then you can just step off of it and keep doing that regularly with your brain, and then your brain's going to learn that that's actually the right way, and it'll reprogram everything. So now I don't worry about arrogance or worthlessness anymore. I'm always in compassion, and that works better for me.
That's so beautiful. I love that.
I like it to be easy.
Me too. Well, and for the longest time, I was like, well, if it's too simple, then it's just not good enough.
Right. That's not true.
Which is the worthlessness right there that we talked about.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be complicated. You're right.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for being a part of this call. And again, if you want to check out the special offer, you can find it at realrawyou.com/Elizabeth. Wow, I need to edit the audio.
We're having so much fun, we can't even remember our names.
Yeah. And we will see you next week. Same time, same place. We're trying to do these on Wednesdays now. And if not, they'll be on Thursday. So the ease and joy and glory of podcasting.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Bye for now.